They want to make themselves masculine. These norms that are uprooted from old times, you know, it's like, oh, there's a reason that they were there.
It took 100 years for women to get to this point, and you damn sure better respect that.
Feeling like you can't ask for that help is part of toxic masculinity in itself.
We got yet another men versus feminist debate, and they get it absolutely rocking. Let's just get into it.
Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm the host,
Let's
Ryan.
get it poppin'.
In this episode, our guests on both sides aim for equality.
Okay.
But do their pursuits for it clash? That's what the men on this side of me and the women on this side of me will discuss today and uncover, along with so much more.
Okay.
Toxic masculinity is a real thing.
Oh.
We'll start by having the agreeing people come up now.
Okay. Oh, everybody except for one person. Okay.
Do I think toxic masculinity exists?
Hold up. Before you get started on this, you have to define what toxic masculinity means within the confines of the debate so that everybody can have a system of being able to understand, because we all know everybody can hear one word and interpret it a bunch of different ways. So they're arguing it from their own understanding of the definition. I think that the word itself has been co-opted in the past 20 years or so to mean something that it originally did not mean. It was created back in the 1980s by a man to describe the difference in it being that there is a healthy masculinity and a toxic masculinity. So like, for example, healthy masculinity might be your willingness to protect, right? To confront others in order to protect your household, your woman, your kids. Whereas the toxic version of that, you're using your inherent power or innate ability to confront others in a negative way, such as taking over their land, their province, or bullying people or a group of people. Now, if toxic masculinity was described as that today, I would actually step forward in here because I do think that masculinity could be used for negative purposes. But the reason that in modern times I would not step forward is because the word has been co-opted by feminists to mean anything that a man does that is not female-like, okay? If a man doesn't show emotion, toxic masculinity. If a man has any critique of those that are in the opposite sex, toxic masculinity or chauvinist or misogynist. The new version of toxic masculinity is essentially anti-male. And it makes sense that they want to push that because the more that your own masculinity is demonized or it's weaponized against you, the more docile or controllable that you are.
Yes. I don't think every guy has it, obviously. Growing up as a guy, we are kind of taught to be a certain way.
Okay.
Every guy has to like be strong and like sports and drink beer and like no, we don't need to do that. We can enjoy things that are not masculine. For an example, I like candles. You know what I mean? Like somebody will come into my apartment and be like, "Oh, that's gay." It's like, no, it's not. It's a fucking wood scented candle. What do you mean? But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I am coming from on the point.
I think toxic masculinity is overused as a phrase, but it's totally a thing. I think there's these guys trying to like prove that they're macho and prove that they are just strong and buff, and then they overcompensate for their insecurities, and it comes across way too aggressive, and it just rubs people the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. I agree with what both of you guys have said so far. I think you've done a really good job offering definitions as far as what it looks like. As a woman who has been on the receiving end of some of that toxicity, my best way to define it is just by giving more examples of what I think it is. If I'm in the workplace, the service industry, for example, and my manager, who is a man, is repeatedly passing behind me and brushing up against my lower back, or a point to talk about how many times he's...
If that actually happens, that's not toxic masculinity. If he's brushing up against you and grabbing or touching your ass, that is sexual assault. If he's actually doing that, but you'll find that a lot of these man haters will concoct ideas of what man's intentions into their mind, establish a negative basis for it, and then labeled it the newfound weaponized term or definition to describe the activity or behavior.
Exercised this week. Those are little things, or back, or a point to talk about how many times he's exercised this week. Those are little things.
It's toxic masculinity to talk about that, how much you This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the new feminist definition of it. A man can't talk about his ability to burn calories within a week. So is it toxic masculinity if I tell you, hey, I went to boxing practice last night and me and my coach, we was battling out last night. Oh, I'm toxic because that's something that I like to do and it's aggressive in nature? That's toxic masculinity. That's the bullshit in this newfound definition.
Things that kind of add up as a woman who has experienced toxic masculinity that is rather frustrating. And I think the overcompensation, like you spoke to, is just really unnecessary. Like, can we have a conversation without the macho persona coming out? Because at the end of the day, I see people as people. When I look at a man, I don't see a man first. I see a person. So you don't have to prove to me that you're a man.
Again, they want men to be women. So a man can't operate as macho? What if that's his base? What if he's just ultra filled with testosterone, baby? No estrogen. And that's his base. Some dudes are like that. Don't demonize him for acting the way that he is made. That's the problem. That's why people today say toxic masculinity does not exist, because feminists like her have co-opted the term.
Or whatever the case may be,
I think I agree with you most, actually, on what toxic masculinity is.
Okay.
But I would even go a step further and say that I think some men are just so afraid to be feminine or seen as feminine that they go above and beyond. Like, they have to show off to their boys, like, I'm a man, I can do this, I can, An example of that from my personal life is I dated a guy and I'm really into skincare, right? I think it's important to take care of yourself. He would not. No skincare, would not.
Why?
My little drops or my face masks with me. Skincare's for everybody, but you correlate it so much with a woman that you're just refusing to take care of yourself altogether. That just doesn't make sense to me, and I think maybe that's an extreme example, but I think it's one that's common.
Toxic masculinity.
Hey, listen, man, if he was not taking care of himself and not washing, that has nothing to do with toxic masculinity or comparison to women, and it has everything to do with him just being a nasty bastard. He's a nasty bastard. What you mean? He wasn't washing himself because that's woman-like? That's disgusting. The funny shit is that if a woman did that, you just call her a nasty woman. Not a toxic feminine woman. Do you understand the bullshit?
I think is sometimes the root of the problem with when you think of school shooters or really people who are getting into fights at school that may lean more masculine or boys, because they don't know how to deal with emotions. There's not emotional intelligence that's being taught, and emotion, for some reason, is tied to the feminine, or showing emotion is more girly, or having a candle being described as gay is nothing I can even comprehend.
This is what I'm talking about.
I'm raising 2 sons. We always encourage them to have emotion, and that crying was okay. But I think that's more rare. If they took that outside the home, they were made fun of for it, or potentially made fun of. Now, my youngest son does seem to be surrounded by more emotionally intelligent people, so he probably felt it less than my older son. We just encouraged that all emotions, anger's okay as well. Sad is okay, tears are okay, happy's okay. But I think that if we encourage our boys or those presenting as such to stifle all of their emotions, I think that's where the aggression comes out. They don't know any other way than to become aggressive, and I think that that's a real detriment.
Yeah.
And that's where
young people emotional control aside is one thing, because yes, I agree that you have to create systems, structures for them to be able to understand and control their emotions. I'm not debating that. But the transition from boyhood to manhood is a completely different thing. And I think by and large, most women don't understand that, and they actually demonize that transition. And I think ergo that's the problem, and ergo why 2-parent households, I will be a proponent of 2-parent households until the end of time, because you need the father there, a strong masculine father, to continue to prepare them for the world around them, a world that does not care about their emotions, a world that will hold them accountable at every step of the way. And there's a certain way that you have to move that women don't have to move, because you're more forgiven for your mistakes. There's more outs for your mistakes, and more people will care about your feelings and emotions when the mistakes are made. This is the reality. I'm not making the rule books. I just live in it.
you think the toxicness comes from. That's when it's stepping into the toxic.
Right, and that there's some sort of expectation, perhaps said, perhaps quiet, that Boys, men have to be in athletics. Boys, men have to be in a certain sector of employment.
Okay.
Boys, men have to be the breadwinner. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on boys and men.
And now I think it is a great time to bring up our one disagreeer.
Okay.
Come on up.
Let's talk about it.
Why don't you start by just kind of letting us know why you think that there's really no toxic masculinity?
It really comes from just kind of the perception people have on how men react naturally. This toxicness that stems from like the household, how they grew up. And as you can see, like through the feminist movement, it's more empowering for women to be single moms and to do whatever they want. And that a lot of the times those men that they deem as toxic actually came up from those households when they don't have the structure. Because like you said, it's a good for the women's side to have, be emotional and let you express yourself. But without the man, you need to have someone in there that has like a foundation. And that brings men a lot of strength, that they have that example of a man to be strong and how to actually handle your emotions instead of just let it.
He gets it. The worst combination of a human being is a physically strong man who cannot control his emotions, who is not accountable, who is not disciplined. And because they're so reactive in nature, they're more inclined to deep to the irrational or the toxic versions of masculinity, right? Not the modern day version or definition, as opposed to logically or intelligently respond to a situation, which will make them more inclined for the healthier degrees of masculinity. Boys react, men respond. There's a difference.
Them out and stuff. I think it's a disclassification of just maybe people who have issues, maybe they need help in some sort of way, they feel insecure, but by victimizing them as like this, they're a toxic male and put them in this box, it further isolates them from like society and pushes them deeper down that rabbit hole. By isolating these men and like kind of putting men in like a trait of like, okay, that's toxic, I'm going to cut them off or whatever. I feel like it's very dangerous and it's very hindering to society because you need to understand where the guy's coming from too. It's not just they have a perfect personality and so they're going to be overly masculine and now they're overtaking things. Like it's never that situation, as you guys alluded to earlier. It's more of like they need help. Be cool. Maybe they're trying to talk to you. Maybe they're trying to have some sort of conversation, but it comes off a certain way. And since society is labeling that, they get labeled as a toxic person and it's hurting them as a whole, and it's not helpful at all.
So you're saying like the label itself is what's continuing to allow men to be toxic, if that is a thing. Like what it's being seen as is toxic, right? Like, because it's basically just writing them off, like, oh, you're toxic, so like you're.
Yeah, and it's like a thing too, where it's like, oh, well, you're gonna label me that? Okay, maybe I might actually go full in and be that 100%. And maybe that's where the incel movement's kind of coming from, the we hate women. I feel like what it started from is like the feminist side of we hate men. And men were like, okay, what's going on? And as a reaction to that, it starts to have that swing of, everybody's being on different polarizing sides and, because they don't feel represented.
I mean, what do you guys think of that?
It's also internet culture.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the need to remove labels from things because I think as a society we do tend to over-label things. Your claim to women having emotions and needing a man to balance them out per se is not true. And by implying that women need a foundation, you're implying that women can't build foundations on their own. If you are inferring that women are more emotional, that doesn't mean they're incapable of handling their emotions when a man isn't around. In order to grasp hard concepts as humans, that we need to label things in order for our brains to make sense of them. So like I said, while I do appreciate your call to not maybe label men as toxic because then that could just fuel the toxicity, do you have any other suggestions maybe then for what we should call behavior that men exhibit that is per se like dangerous?
They will always forgo biology, A lot of the way that we conduct and handle ourselves have to do with the hormones that are pumping throughout our body. Men have more testosterone, women have more estrogen. Run a blood test on yourself and go look at your girl's blood test. It's going to be completely different when it comes to those metabolic panels. We were made this way to balance each other out. You are the yin to my yang, baby. How can we figure out how to work together in order to form synergy within our bond or our relationship? where 1 + 1 is going to equal 3, if not 4 or 5. I can readily admit as a man that having a good woman within my life can identify things that I may be unable to be able to see, because she can come forward with a degree of selflessness or compassion that may not come as readily available to me. But I know for damn sure that I'm going to go above and beyond to protect the sanctity or the modesty or the beauty that she represents with her own femininity. It is okay that we're different, baby girl. We're not the same. The lie here is that you were told that we were the same and that we should be treated equally, or that we are actually, in reality, treated equally, when we all know that we're not. We could be equally valued for different things, but we are not treated equally. Let's go.
Or reactive, which is something I heard you say as well.
I don't think you were saying like a man needs to stabilize her, right? You're saying
No.
it's the effect of the combination of
Yeah, I
the
was
two.
saying like in the household, like emotions kind of like the women are like
he
the
never said
water
that.
and the men are the concrete barrier in a way.
What do you think of that?
I disagree.
Okay.
I live by myself. I support myself.
Here
and
we
I have
go.
since I was 18 years old. I've had to find that stability on my own without a man beside me. And while I agree that women's emotions might be more fluid, I don't think that having concrete around to balance it out is necessarily a good thing. I think that sounds a bit stifling, actually.
Okay.
So I was gonna say, there's like this whole complex of like alpha and beta males, and I've been labeled beta male majority of my life. And there's like this pendulum swing, and we gotta find the balance in the middle, where we can appreciate both sides, so that we're not toxic males trying to overcompensate for insecurities, and we also gotta appreciate our feminine side and women, so that we can meet in the middle.
Fair. What do you guys think about just everything that is the first original statement?
I think in regard to what you said, I think that's something for men to do. And what I mean by that is I don't think, or at least most women I know, think men have to be like strong and macho and carry the heavy furniture and drive trucks and all of that. I think that's an expectation men have for each other. And so that's also part of where the toxic masculinity part can come in. Because another thing that you had said was, I guess the manifestation of toxic masculinity is a result of like needing help, like a cry for help and not necessarily getting it. But I would say that feeling like you can't ask for that help is part of toxic masculinity in itself. Because again, I think that's an expectation that men put on each other. You have to be strong, you have to, do all these things. And like I said, no woman I know has that expectation. I don't think men should have to be strong all the time, because they're not, and that's okay. But I think men need to start holding themselves to that same standard, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Question for you, because I know that guys don't have to be, right? I do hear a lot about that. What do you think happens to men when they don't follow that? You're a man, you're supposed to be this and that. Let's say you started crying right now in front of everybody.
Yeah.
In your normal situation, how would you be accepted for that?
Is someone who kind of built their
matters.
self-confidence up, and if you're someone who's not like self-conscious and things, you can release those type of emotions around your friends, and it's actually a good thing. And it's something that can help bond with people. I know for sure that a lot of times when guys do go out and they share their feelings, maybe they're crying with their wife, the wife doesn't see them exactly how they were before. They lose a little bit of respect because he's not that masculine man. So it's not just on the men's side where it's like, oh, we need you to be masculine. The women, they want to be ideally feminine, and like they need that masculine to balance each other out. And so we need each other.
Right. But listen, also within that question, and it was such a good follow-up question because I wanted to interrupt. I've been interrupt a lot within here. My apologies. Nevertheless, I love these conversations, baby. It should have been a live stream. But nevertheless, I think that the context matters, all right? If the husband is crying around the wife because one of the most important relationships, right, let's say top 5 relationships within his life, whether it be his parents or something like that, has ceased to exist, then crying is par for the course, right? But if you have a man that's crying after he tripped over the curb and needs a damn Band-Aid, that's completely damn different. That's completely damn different. And I think that the majority of women, that would turn them off. The same way, like if you ask a young lady, yo, listen, if we was out into the club and a dude put his hands up on me and you standing right there, you know what I mean? What are the actions that you would do? And he'll just be like, I wouldn't do anything. I would just wait till he takes his hands up off of you. And maybe I might just, whisper very quietly, could you please take your hands up off of her? Most women's viscous innards they would go right back up into their ovaries, baby. It would turn them off completely. It would turn to concrete. You heard? And that's just the reality, is that context matters. Now, within masculinity, I'm not saying a dude, comes up and says something, talks to your chick, and all of a sudden you get the beats up on him. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that that's smart either, right? But is there a high IQ, intelligent way, healthy masculine way to be able to diffuse the situation? And what are the things that you do if that person wants to take it to the next level? Because that dude could just assume that, she might be standing like a little bit to herself. Maybe she's not in a relationship, so you just go get the beats up on him. That's not a smart thing. But if you were to confront him, he then acknowledges, oh, my bad, I didn't know. He walks out, right? Like, there's way to go about situations that are not as a detriment to the area or the environment that you were in. And then both people can leave the situation injury-free. Nevertheless, also, the last young lady over here, I think, her talking about essentially what she was trying to do is to say that toxic masculinity is stood up by other men, and it being that there are men who also force kind of a certain type or an image of a man up on other men. And here's my response to that is that I don't think that that is toxic. I don't think that is toxic, ma'am. So if a man decides that, hey, listen, I want to go pick daisies and I'm on the cheerleading practice squad and I want to paint my nails pink and shit like that, right? These are all things that might be outside of the realm of what is considered traditional masculinity. But I don't think that it's toxic to challenge some of these norms and some of these standards. Why can't it just be a challenge to a traditional standard and or a norm? And listen, as a man, if you want to step outside of the box, my thing is that you just got to deal with the consequences of what that is and what it might mean. So anyway, to conclude the entire conversation, for all of the G's out there that's listening, let's just make this clear. The modern definition of toxic masculinity doesn't exist. It's not real. It's being weaponized in order to try to control you or deem that your natural feeling is not good. And you need to be much more female appropriate, right? Have traits of much more feminine characteristics in order to be normal within society. And I think that it is a conscription to try to control you, all right? It's shaming you out of who you are destined or designed, rather, to be. Because strength, discipline, leadership, accountability, these are not flaws, all inherent within masculinity. And it just so happens that these traits are the backbones of families, communities, and society as a whole. And if a man if he cannot be strong, or it's deemed as toxic that he talks about how he gets strong, whether it be working out, then that is a clear indication that is something wrong here. But just like there are these women, and I'd be actually curious at the young lady's sexual orientation, because the way that she's talking, I can see that, has bad relationship with man and then switches to women for the rest of her life. But nevertheless, what she wants will create a much more unsafe environment for women. If a man is not strong, if he cannot protect, if he doesn't get easily overwhelmed or have the want to be able to take care of and provide for, that he will be less likely to be able to lead, and his children will be lost. And if a man cannot discipline himself, his household will crumble. These are some of the problems when masculinity is deemed as toxic and is stripped away, twisted, or misused improperly. And the real poison is a culture that tells young boys and young men to suppress their instincts. All right, guys, leave me your questions, comments, concerns down up in the comment box down below. Hey, this was a joyful conversation, right? Hopefully you guys had a fantastic journey with me here today. Hopefully it sparked some much needed conversations within your own lives as well. All right. Don't be scared to send videos like this over to, that chick that you on a third or a fourth date with. All right. Because although it might sting her conclusions in the conversation, I think it is healthy for you to begin to understand her feelings regarding some of these topics, her thoughts of you as a man, what it is that she sees for you in the future, and how it is that she will deem you as a future father. Okay? Until next time, you two. Peace.
She belongs to the street.
Girl, don't hold my hand. You a mattress actress on the OnlyFans. Get your money, girl, but damn, how is that your only plan? What you gonna do when you get too old to strip and dance? Get up out your echo chamber screaming period and yes. You a low down dirty woman if you try to get knocked up by a high value man.